May not be very fun for some people. Man, it's crazy how big this world is, how much education there is, and how little there is of right and wrong. So let's talk about Trump. Let's talk about first my economics studies. All right. I have a degree in economics with mathematical economics. I've been studying business, economics, finance since the day I knew what numbers were. Really, that's my passion. Right. Everything I do, small business, economics, how to make money work for the world. And here's the crazy part during my studies, and I'm learning now that everyone who has a degree in America is taught that isolation is bad, free trade is good, and and all right, oh man, I'm gonna try to break this down into layman's terms. All right, so here's a lot of truth to that. Okay, so let's just say, all right, we're gonna cool. Okay, I think I know we're gonna do this. We're gonna talk a little bit about Trump's tariffs and how yeah, it's fantastic. So every American economist is, pretty much against tariffs, thinking they're stupid, this and that. And we've been taught this our whole lives. I've been taught tariffs are bad, that I don't even believe. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Um, so we've been taught our whole lives tariffs are bad for the economy. Everything should be free trade, right? And here's why. Here's the reason why free trade is so amazing. Um, so if Mexico, let's use random countries. Let's just say if Austania produces bananas by the dozens and has really good processes and they're cheaper, well, then it should produce the bananas for the world, right? Or let's just say it's two different countries, Austania and Lostania. That's too similar. I'm really bad at this. Yeah, let's call it Cherville and Austania. Very different. All right. Austania produces amazing bananas, has processes down. Austania is like, okay, we're really good at doing bananas. And Cherville is like, dude, our soil kind of sucks. We don't produce very good bananas. It costs Cherville $1 per banana to grow it there. It costs Austania 50 cents plus 10 cents in shipping costs. So now, Cherville, why would they not pay the 60 cents and save themselves 40 cents from Austania and then spend their resources on, let's say, manufacturing chairs? And let's say Chairville can make a chair for $20 and it's $2 in shipping costs to Austania. But Austania, to produce a chair, they ain't got very good resources. Their chairs are like $50. And they're like, okay, so screw that. $50. Let's go buy this chair for $22 and we'll sell them bananas at 60 cents. And now we have free trade. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Now, both places are getting cheaper chairs and cheaper bananas. Hell yeah. So now, if we bring it into a larger macroeconomics in a less simplistic way, subsidies and tariffs, both of which I've been taught to be against my entire life in the American education system. And now that I have worldwide global financial friends, I'm learning that it's not taught that way everywhere. And there's actually an entire school of economists, many of them are East Asian, that that believe tariffs actually are amazing. Oh man, I forgot his name. It's like Hun Sang Kang. Oh shoot, I want to look it up so bad. Shoot, it's so important. Let's just this is gonna disconnect. You know what? I'm just gonna go grab my laptop. Okay, so there's an economist. He actually won a huge award, not quite the Nobel Prize for economics, but won a massive award and many others, and is a renowned economist. And he is now, with many other famous economists, publishing papers, peer reviewed, all that good shit, real papers, publishing them regarding the fact that many of the best economies in the world today actually use tariffs and isolation to build up their thing. So here's the argument. So if you didn't know, the US basically had tariffs, and that was the entire form of revenue for the government until like the 1910s, right around there somewhere. And they just a second, there it is. Okay, so let me. His name doesn't matter. If you care enough about economics and all that, you can ask me later. So, there's a whole school of economists, right? A lot of them are East Asian slash Middle Eastern, and they're saying all these first world countries had periods of isolation. The U.S. had it, right? We were big time isolationists. We're famous for that, at least in our history. And we had tariffs from the day that the U.S. was born until like the 1910s. We had tariffs. Then right around there, we decided to switch it to income tax. So right now, everyone's just familiar with income tax. We don't realize that over half of our country's life was our government was funded by tariffs. So my whole life, I've been taught tariffs, fuck tariffs, they're stupid, whatever, whatever. They inhibit free trade, which is very true. They do inhibit free trade. And if you're looking at pure economically, tariffs are stupid and they suck. But let's focus on if you only want one economy to grow, which is kind of how we are right now in America. If we want just the American economy to grow, we don't care about the rest of the world, well, obviously tariffs are going to be great. Here's how they work. So what they call this a barrier to entry, right? So let's say there's bananas. We're all producing bananas, and there's 5 major banana companies, right? To enter that, all you would have to really do is get land that has good soil and get bananas and start producing, right? Low barrier to entry. Now, it would be really, really tough in today's banana economy because you'd have to get distribution lines, you'd have to get trucks, this and that. It would cost a fortune to enter the banana market unless you enter one piece of it where you just manufacture and you sell it to a distributor. That's totally cool. So what tariffs do is they make it so that it's more difficult for other countries to enter our markets. So let's take cars, right? We produce a lot of cars here. We have like 3 big companies. Actually, even Toyota has plants here. I mean, almost all the big ones have plants here because of things like this in the past. And so they want to make sure that they're produced here so they don't ruin their distribution lines, their chains, anything like that. So now we have these tariffs. So let's say to produce a car in the U.S., it costs $20,000. So you got Ford producing at 20,000. You got Chrysler. Okay, let's say in where is it cheaper? Let's say Mexico, it's cheaper. It's only 15,000. Okay, and 2,000 to ship it. So now we're saving 3,000. It's $17,000 to buy a car shipped from Mexico. 20,000 here. Okay, so we keep buying out there. All right. So economically, makes sense. They have better, cheaper labor, whatever it is. Let's spend the money and save $3,000 and get those products. Because the number one rule in economics is more is better. It's like the fundamental rule of all our algorithms, all our studies, all our calculus. More is better. All right, so now we're buying $17,000 cars from Mexico, producing them for $20,000 in America. So now, let's say it's the exact same car. So why would you ever buy one in America? If you can sit here, have it shipped, I mean, I guess you would buy it if you need it like a day sooner. Okay, we need it a day sooner. We'll spend the $3,000 from the American manufacturer. So what tariffs do is they now increase a barrier to entry. So they essentially add, let's say it's 30% or whatever. Let's say it's 100%. So now that $17,000 car, or I guess it was 15,000 plus 2,000 shipping, right? So that $15,000 car is now 30,000, which means that nobody's buying those Mexican cars anymore because the tariffs are so expensive. Not only is every Mexican car sold, giving money to the American government, but now there's less Mexican cars sold because they're too expensive, right? So essentially, it's increasing the barrier to entry for markets and allowing American firms to have less competition. So, globally, terrible idea. Tariffs fuck everything up. And if you are the most efficient, best car manufacturer in the world, and now you've got tariffs here, tariffs there, it just adds chinks and chains into your distribution, right? But if you're trying to improve one economy, removing competitors can be beneficial. Now, it takes time. Say America does not build semiconductor chips and we add a tariff to them. Well, all that does is it makes it an increased barrier and harder for foreign firms to compete. So now if I had resources to build a semiconductor chip plant, and I was like, Taiwan does it really well, so I'm not going to do it. But now Taiwan has an extra 50% tax rate. Oh, well, in that case, I could produce them at $100 a unit. With that tariff, Taiwan's are going to be $140 a unit. Maybe I'll enter that market. It's going to take time. You got to build a plant. You got to hire the people, train them, all that good stuff. Which is why these tariffs that Trump keeps going back and forth are not helpful. He needs to pick a route and just stick with it. And it's going to take time. Could be years, could be decades, depending on which good and product it is and how long it takes. So in the short term, it's probably not the best idea. But in the long term, if you only care about the American economy and you think that only Americans can survive producing all their own goods and selling to each other, if you believe both of those things, then you should be pro-tariff and increasing the barriers of entry to American markets. Now, if you're educated in America and have an economics degree, such as me, you have been taught that the general good for the world is to have the most efficient producers producing the goods that they are the best at, which is easier said than done now that governments get involved, yada, yada, yada. Ideally, it would just, if economists ruled the world, there'd be no borders, no taxes, no other. We'd all just be like, all right, that region, you produce bananas, you're amazing, produce all those bananas. You over there, you guys produce chairs, all right, you're the chair guys. And it would all be free trade, and we'd all just essentially barter like we could back in the day. But that is essentially what tariffs are doing. They are making the markets easier for American firms to succeed by enforcing the costs of their competitors up. Some serious market manipulation, which is also very against economic views, because anytime the government gets involved, most people, I guess there's a lot of Marxists out there and other types of economies that governments are involved, but most American economists have been taught either laissez-faire or Friedman or anything of those types where the government really shouldn't get too involved and manipulate the market, because markets take care of themselves. Inefficiencies get worked out. I'm more of an Adam Smithian with absolutely laissez-faire, no touching at all. Get those governments out of here and let the markets figure it all out. Capitalism is driven by profit, and profit only comes when workers are treated right because they have to be productive. When workers are happy, the best companies in the world are typically American, and the happiest employees are typically American. Now, are there exploited American workers? Absolutely. It's a big country, a lot of firms doing a lot of crazy stuff. But if you look at the top countries, Apple, what else is up there? I don't know much about Exxon actually, but Tesla, all of them, all those employees are happy. I mean, my uncle is pretty high up in Apple, and he's a happy little camper. So in the end, profit is determined by thousands, if not millions of factors, and a lot of it has to do with employee morale and employee productivity, which is usually the negative recourse for capitalism. Man, I went on a giant tangent. What am I talking about? Tariffs. The old tariffs. So in the end, tariffs are used as a tool that the U.S. has had since its inception, and every president has had them. Trump is in the news because that's what he loves to do, is get in the frickin' news. His levels of the tariffs are not higher than they were back in the 1890s. And now he's using them to try to remove foreign companies from competing in American markets and making it easier for American companies to compete for American people. The only problem is it takes time, supply chains suck. We right now take other products, other raw goods from other countries, and so now we're paying those tariffs, which means prices will rise in the short term, possibly the long term if it doesn't work out. And so really he does the tariffs by country when you really should almost do it by industry for that country. Um, what are we good at? Cool. If we're the best, if America is the best grapes, we make the best grapes, California, Napa, we have the best grapes, then we should definitely, you could have a tariff everywhere else or have no tariff because if they're reciprocating them, if we have a tariff to let our grape industry grow and ripen, and then once we start trying to export, if other countries are tariffing our grapes, well, we could remove that and just let it be an open market, knowing that we have the best grapes, the most efficient processes, and that we can sell the most grapes. It's more the industries that we're struggling in that we want to keep them for ourselves. Like the cars may or may not be a good one. I'd have to look more into the car industry. I'm not that familiar with it. But if we want our cars to succeed, you keep Toyota and Kia and all those companies out, and you let Ford and Chrysler take the American market up, which is one of the biggest markets. We all buy cars, American made cars. Everyone in America is driving American made cars. Yippee ki yay! Okay, now that and let the car companies figure their stuff out. We have Tesla, Rippy, and whoever else let them grow and work out all their kinks and efficiencies. And then once they're feeling strong on the world market, we take away those tariffs, and then other countries remove their tariffs, and now we flood it with American cars. That's the theory. Will it work? Who fuck it knows? Can it work? It probably could work. Will it work? We're gonna give a nice eye roll for that one.